So today's guest is Lisa Lofty. Now, there are a lot of reasons I want to talk to Lisa. To name a few, she's a fitness enthusiast like me. She owns Lobo Fitness, which she started in 2007. She's also a hiker who leads large groups of women on amazing adventures out west, which is her side hustle, and it blossomed during the pandemic. She's also a caregiver, something else that I did and is near and dear to my heart, for her 91-year-old mother. And she does not know it yet, but we are sisters from another mother, because I'm telling you, this whole list, it's like all me. I love fitness and hiking. I've been a caregiver. So Lisa, welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, I buried the lead because when I was looking at your bio, I was like, wait a minute, she was a runway model also?
For years.
Okay. So you were doing that in Miami, DC, New York.
Yes.
Let's talk about where you started. I know you went to the University of Maryland. You majored in speech communication. I know that's a really prestigious program there. How did you go from that to modeling to what you're doing today?
So while I was in school, there was a woman who came to the campus and she was looking for models to do a show for her. Her name was Barbara McConaughey, and she would do shows all around the Washington metropolitan area. And I met her and I started doing some modeling for her. I was always 5'10" and stick thin back then. So I started doing that while I was in college, and it was a great little side job while I didn't have classes, and it didn't take much work. So that's what I did during college.
So then you went into speech therapy, which is a really specific field. It's a field that takes a lot of education. How did that then move into this kind of health, wellness, fitness realm?
Well, I majored in speech communication with the thought of probably going into public relations, and I ended up working for a commercial real estate firm. Back then, I think that was in the 80s, and that was when a big boom happened and people were being let go. And fortunately or unfortunately, I was one of the ones who stayed. So they dumped a lot of the stuff on us. So I just started taking my modeling pictures and sent them around to different agencies in Miami. And some of them said, hey, come out here. So I wasn't married, didn't have any children. And so that's how I flew to Miami, because of just the commercial real estate back then. I'm actually back into that field now. But back then it was a big boom and people were being let go. And so I ended up in Miami and I started doing the modeling thing for about 3 years. And then I went to New York, well, stayed in New Jersey because I couldn't afford New York, stayed in New Jersey and modeled in New York, and then eventually back to DC.
So, and I correct myself because I said speech therapy, and obviously it's speech communications.
Mhm.
And I love this part of your story. So talk to me about this. So you were leading a fitness ministry at your church,
Mhm.
and that's how you decided to start a fitness company. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so we had a revival service at our church, and there was some preacher there who said, you know, I need to hear what you'd like to do with your life. And I went up to him and said, I'd like for the church to do a fitness program, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Black church, we serve fried chicken dinners and fish dinners and all that. And then, at people's funerals, that's what we serve for the repast. I mean, so this is what we do. So I just wanted to do something a little more health forward. And so I talked to my pastor after that, and he said, why don't you get started? Then I got scared, like, oh, what have I done? So I started it, and people came, and then they were looking for me for help. And so I had to get some certifications to figure out what I was doing. And then I just fell in love with it. I fell in love with it. I started teaching boot camps and um, teaching senior fitness, and then I ended up working at the Hyatt for 10 years as one of their fitness instructors. Um,
And where
teaching
did all this take place, Lisa?
in
Where
Washington, D.C.
in
In
Washington?
Washington,
Okay.
D.C. It all started from just going to church and saying, hey, let's start exercising a little bit. And then I just fell in love with it.
And you talked about in your bio how training your body also begins with training your mind, which I love that because I really believe that discipline is a huge part of fitness and health and wellness, right? We have to commit to it,
Absolutely.
whether it's a walk or a hike or a bike or a swim or a run. How do you help get people into that mindset?
Well, because when folks say to me, oh gosh, I can't do that. And then I say, well, if you can't do that, you'll never do that. You have to reprogram yourself. I've never been good at this. Well, neither was I. I wasn't good at it either, but you just started doing it. And then once it becomes a habit and you see progress and you see changes, then you'll get the hang of it. But give it a try. I just say, give it a try. Don't say you can't, because if you continue to say you can't, you won't.
Very true. Um, and then this blossomed into something else. And this was like my favorite thing because my daughter and I just got back from a big hiking trip in Maine at
Ooh,
Acadia.
oh,
And
nice.
I've also hiked in Sedona, and
Yes,
North Carolina is where I live, and that's a huge hiking area. So
yes.
I'm a big fan of the outdoors and just the whole connection, the body brain connection, spirituality, all of that. Um, Talk to me about these trips. So you started during the pandemic trying to figure out what can we do outside, right?
So yeah, I actually started, there were four of us at the time in 2009, I believe. We were watching The Biggest Loser, and we used to call each other on commercials, and we saw that they were in some place in Utah. And this was back in 2009. And we said, we should try. Let's go to Utah. But we didn't want to go to that resort because we didn't want to be restricted, but we just wanted to do something different for a vacation. The four of us had never hung out before for a vacation. And we went and we fell in love with the West. We fell in love with hiking. And from then on, I would go every year to either Utah or Santa Fe. I've been to Vermont. It would just grow every year. And then when the pandemic started, so what I would do was do a few hikes before the big trip of the year. I would maybe do 2 or 3 hikes just to get us acclimated because we were already exercising and doing all these other things. So when the pandemic hit, nobody could go anywhere. So I just started doing my local hikes, and it grew and grew, and hundreds of people just said, where are you going next? And people would tell someone, and then that really grew. And so we would do maybe 2 or 3 a month, different hikes. So that's how that started during the pandemic.
And then you had these big trips out west, right?
Yes.
I mean, you had like, I think you said you had one trip to Arizona where you took 96 people. That's just amazing
Yeah,
that you had
actually
such
took,
interest.
yeah, I actually took 96 ladies to Utah in
To Utah. Okay. And then
2023.
you
That
took
was in St. George, Utah.
84 to Arizona.
And
Okay.
we
I
took
got the numbers
84.
wrong.
That's
But doesn't
okay. Yeah,
matter. It's a lot of people.
it's still a lot of people. Initially I said 96. Gosh, that was so many people. I'm only going to do 60 for Arizona. But then people said, can I go? And I was like, of course. And so it ended up being 84 ladies to Arizona, which was beautiful. We went to Phoenix, we hiked Sedona, we went to the Grand Canyon, and it was just beautiful. Everyone, the age range was from 24 to 86.
That's amazing to have that kind of a, because we talk about that on this show a lot, how generational relationships are really important for women. I mean, we
Absolutely.
need to learn from younger people. We get energy from them, creativity, new ideas, and then they need to learn from older people, from people whose shoulders they stand on, who came
Right,
before them, the struggles that they went through.
right. I totally
Lisa,
agree.
how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm
Because you look
59.
okay, you look really young to
Thank you.
me. So you're doing something in addition to all of this that a lot of women in our age range are doing, which is taking care of a parent. How long have you been doing that? And talk to me about what that's like for you and your family.
Yeah, my mom got ill in 2020. We didn't know. She's staying with my brother, who lives in Maryland, Prince George's County. And I just noticed she had this cough. She just had this recurring cough. So we didn't know if it was COVID at the time. So she came to stay with me in May of 2020, and she was just really listless. And that's not like my mom. Even though she's older, she's always very alert and aware, and she just wanted to sleep all the time. So I took her to the hospital, to the emergency room, which she did not want to go because she's always, I'm fine. She's always smiles, I'm fine, no problem. And they said she needs to get to the hospital immediately. Her oxygen was really low, and we found out she had congestive heart failure, which she's probably had for years, but was misdiagnosed. So she stayed in the hospital for about 2 weeks, and they didn't want her to come back. They thought that she would go into hospice or a rehab center. And I said, no, I think I want her to come here because if she went to any of those places at that time, we couldn't visit her and it would have killed us both. So I begged the doctor at the emergency room to have her come back with me, and he was completely against it. Said, she can go at any minute. You're not going to be able to lift her. My mom's short, but she's a heavier woman, and she's still here. It's June, almost June of 2024, and she has just. I got her to exercise, even though she can't do but so much. But she has a little bike that you sit and you move your feet. She can stand up, she can sit down, she has little baby weights. She can get up and walk on her wheelchair, and I have her doing things. So
So this is so cool. So she's how old now?
she's
91?
91. Yeah.
So what is your daily life like related to that? I mean, how does that
So
affect your ability to do things?
yeah, she's actually pretty self-sufficient. She is on a walker. We have a chair, the chair that allows her to get herself up so she won't have to struggle. And she's down on one level. I have her downstairs, so she's close to her bathroom and everything, and she has a microwave down there. I make sure when I go to lunch, go to work in the morning, that she has her breakfast and her lunch, and I get home and I make sure she has dinner. Then my husband comes home, maybe he'll get home before me and make sure she has dinner. But she's pretty, as long as she has her cell phone and her television and a book, she's fine.
Yeah, but I don't want to discount the responsibility that you have. It's a big responsibility. I used to say, with my mom, and she only lived 80 days, but she needed 24/7 caregiving, that it was such a privilege. I felt like it was such a privilege to be caring for her. But it's also a huge responsibility, and so
Absolutely.
you have to
I,
balance
I
it.
absolutely. It's definitely a privilege. And I said the one thing the pandemic was good for, I was able to stay home and work from home. Like right now, I work 3 days a week in DC and I'm home on Mondays and Fridays. So I'm with her. But the pandemic allowed me to stay home every day so I can watch her. So when the nurses would come once or twice a week, and her occupational therapist would come. I'm there, and I can still work on my job. So that was a blessing to me that I was able to be home and take her to her doctor's appointments and do everything that needed to be done.
And it's amazing. I mean, 91, that's a feat in itself, right? To
Mhm.
live to
Yeah,
91.
definitely.
What has it done for your relationship to have her this close and to have her in your home?
We've always been really close. Before my mom, I was a daddy's girl, though. My dad passed in 1991, and I was a true, true daddy's girl. I always got along with my mom, but it's something about fathers and daughters, at least with mine, is really close with him. But after my dad passed, we got really super close, and we do stuff together. My cousin and I, who's the same age as I am, we get our mothers together at least once a month. We host my house one month, her house the next month, and her sister, my mom's sister, just turned 90. So we make sure that the sisters see each other, and then we sit around and play games, and we just eat and talk and laugh. We make sure that they get out.
And I'm sure your mom appreciates everything that you've done for her.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's good, I think it's just good for the next generation to see too that this is what we do, right? You take care of your loved ones.
Absolutely. She took care of me. And so when she first came, she's like, "Oh, I don't want you to do this. I don't want you to have to wash me up," because initially she was really weak. And I said, "Well, you did the same thing to me." She said, "But that was different." I said, "No, it's not. You need me. I need you." So
Yeah,
I'm,
it's an amazing role reversal,
yeah,
isn't it? I
yeah,
felt like that, all of a sudden I was the one taking care of her for meals and like you said, washing and all of that stuff. And
everything.
my mom kept saying the same stuff. And you're like, look, you did this for me, all my whole life when I was growing up.
Sure.
So it's returning that favor.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, you have obviously managed to balance so many things in your life. And I think a lot of women over a certain age feel like, um, maybe they're stuck. Maybe they don't have another chapter. Maybe they don't know what's around the corner. And what kind of advice would you give women who are in that situation? Because it sounds like you probably work with a lot of women in your fitness industry who come to you and say those similar things like, I don't know where to turn. I don't know what to do next.
I just believe that you're never stuck. There's always something to learn. There's always something to do. There's always somebody to talk to. There's always something that you could do to better yourself. Even with my mom, she's 91. She can still right now she's practicing to sing. She has a song they've asked her to sing. My mom used to sing and now I sing also. And so we sing together. And so now she's like, when are we going to rehearse our song? Because there's always something to do to bring joy, whether you're walking outside, getting some sunshine. Just I have a neighborhood walking group too that I started about 7 years ago. And our neighborhood, we do things together too. So there's always something to do. I would tell folks not to ever think that they're stuck. Um, Especially in today's time, there's technology. You can even turn on a YouTube, and if you don't feel like, a lot of my ladies in my hiking group are introverts. So they're like, Lisa, it's 80 some people. I don't think I want to be here. But it's not that because we don't do like, okay, 8 o'clock, everybody go hike. 9 o'clock, we all have breakfast. It's not like that. We have a schedule. You do one thing, you do another thing, and it all
You
just,
don't have to do everything, right?
no, you don't, you can do as little or as much as you want. And so I would just tell anybody who says that just to be patient with yourself and give yourself grace, and because there's always something that you can do.
And there's always something to learn, and especially if you're curious, right? What
Always.
is it, because when I saw like Sedona for the first time, when I climbed one of those mountains, or even just recently when I climbed these mountains in Maine, it's so there's so much awe in seeing natural beauty. What is it like for you to see some of these women seeing this stuff for the first time?
It's
Not.
almost like it's spiritual. People
Mhm,
are like, oh my, the great, and like, oh my gosh, you see it in a book, but it's not the
mhm.
same seeing it in person. Like, wow, I mean, you're just out here in the elements and then you look down and you say, wow, I hiked that. I did that. Like pat on my back. If I can do that, I can do anything. Uh, you know, because I have people in my group, especially this one young lady, she's in my group. She said, Lisa, I didn't think I would ever. I'm like, I'm going to give it a try. But then she said the people were so warm. And then once she found out that she could do it, she fell in love with it because it's
Yeah,
like
it's like we don't know what we're capable of sometimes until we
until you
try.
do it, until you
Yeah,
try it.
I mean, believe me, my daughter tested me on our on our trip. There were a few I was like, not going to do that again." But some of
Yeah,
them I was like, "Wow, I can't believe I did that." And it
yeah.
feels really great.
Just the settings are so gorgeous.
They
So,
are. And I think the word spiritual is right. I think
mhm.
there's something about it when you see it, you're like, "How is this even real?" You see it in a movie, you see it in a book, you see it on the internet, but it's just overwhelming,
Something
when you
about
see it
being
in
out in
person.
nature is just is magnificent.
It is. It is. It's incomparable. Well, Lisa, I'm going to put your links, but how can people follow you? They can follow you on several places.
Yeah, on Instagram, I'm Lobo Fitness DC. It's LOBO Fitness, all one word, DC. On Facebook, I'm Lobo Fitness of Washington, DC. And I think TikTok, I'm Lobo Fitness DC as well.
Okay. Well, I'll put all the links in the notes into the show notes. But thank you so much for doing this. You've been really great because your story is so interesting, but you're also such a warm and generous person, generous of spirit. And I just think my audience is going to get a lot out of it. So,
Thank you so much, Amanda. I really appreciate you asking me to be on the program. It's wonderful. And I've
well,
listened to your podcast and it's great.
well,
I've listened to almost all of them.
well, thank you. Audience, hear that? Go back and listen to the ones you haven't heard.